Alright guys, Ali Jr. here, and we're going to be recording part 2 of the advanced weapons tutorial right now, here in GIMP. Today we're going to be focusing on muzzle flashes for the weapon. And we obviously need a lot more room, so let's do that. Image, scale image, and bring it way up. I know you can't see this window. OBS isn't capturing it because it's stupid, but I hope you can sort of understand what's going on. I think this might be a little too big. You can make it a little wider. And I think that's good enough space to make the muzzle flash look as relentless as possible. So, to start making the muzzle flash, I'm going to create a new layer and start it off completely black. And then, set this to normal. And this thing right here is all the brush modes, basically, how it renders it. And we're gonna put a small glow at full opacity. We'll bring it down, make a slightly bigger circle with a lot less opacity. And what that will do is create much more contrast in the brightness than if we were to just have one circle and smudge the flash from there. So make sure you have two circles. And we don't need the gun layer to be visible because it's going to get in the way while we're editing. So now we're going to the smudge tool right over here. And the first movement is this way. And it's going to be quite drastic since the gun flash is pointing forward, as in Doom. You know, Doom's flashes tend to point forward, so we'll bring it up like this. Zoom out a little bit. I think we can make it a little better. A little less intense on the rate, and I can increase the brush size. And be sure to smudge from the dark areas of the flash and from the center as well. So like on the sides, you'd smudge from a little outward. And where you would imagine the flare would be, the flare on top of the muzzle flash would be from the sides like that. And I think we need to make the front a little longer. And here's what it looks like with the gun. Obviously we need to color it. So before we do that, we'll adjust the color contrast a little more, raising up the really dark areas and bringing it down a little here, a little higher, and a little lower. So it sort of looks more contrasted, so the color balance effect that we're going to be using will affect it a little better. Alright, before and after. So I think we're done with the flash itself. Now let's, oh shit, zoom out a little more. Now feathering, and set the selection mode to its default, which is composite. There we go. And of course you'd want to blur the edges a little bit, because the black looks kind of weird in a muzzle flash. We'll need a little bit of it to make it look thicker and for some smoke, but you don't want much blackness in a flash sprite. So now we're going to color it using color balance. And I like to make the dark areas a little grayish, so not much effect on the colors. In the midtones, I'll bring yellow all the way up and red a little. And for the highlights, red all the way up and yellow a little bit up. So there's what we have so far. we need to make it seem a little brighter. So we'll make a new layer and remove all the blackness with the color to alpha tool, which is in the colors tab. I know you can't see it because of OBS with their BS. So that's what it does. There's a new layer, and we're going to duplicate the black layer, and it'll be one that's extended to the side, and this one will be extended upward. So from the side one, we'll just use the layer, scale layer tool. And if we set an interpolation, it'll blur it, which is okay. We kind of want that in this case, although many times you'd set interpolation in this scale layer, invisible tab to none. It'll be visible if you're doing it, obviously, but on my recording it's not capturing it. I don't know what's going on. So again, apologies for that. But we'll bring it up a little bit. So this is the side layer, so we'll mostly bring out the width and not much height to it. Alright, and we'll blur it. Mostly to the side. So my size X on Gaussian blur, which is in the filters blur section. Wait, hold on. Filters and blur is about here. And we'll go to Gaussian blur and set size X to a little higher and size Y to a little lower. 3.50 is what I'm using for X, and 1 is what I'm using for Y. And for the top one, I want to make it skinny and tall. So again, I'm at scale layer from the layer tab, and we'll make it thinner on the width and higher on the height. I think we can set the interpolation to none, so it feels a little sharper. And that's not big enough, but we can use this manual scale tool over here. Alright, here's what it looks like. We need to reduce the opacity quite a bit. Alright, and now we need to actually make the barrel brighter. So, yeah, we just duplicated that, and we'll use the desaturate and colors tool. So desaturate from the arrow, and I'm on luminescence, so just see which one looks the most right, which doesn't affect the brightness much. So I like average HSI intensity for the mode. And we'll copy it again, go to desaturate again, and we'll be using color to gray, which creates a very bright effect, as you can see. Hold on. Alright, there we go. And shortening the radius option in color to gray will increase the brightness. So that's what we want. And first step, we'll be using the eraser tool to bring the brightness to back it down from the back. Let's try that again. Again, sorry that it's hard to see what's up here. I'll try to figure that out if I can, or I'll have to narrate it. And for the back of the first bright map, I guess you can call it that, we're going to remove all brightness from the back. Oh, what the hell. Opacity should be way up. And you can go outside a little bit, don't worry too much. It's not going to affect the outside once we use the screen tool. Alright, those are our two layers. I'll bring them together and see what it looks like with screen mode. So obviously we need to color it. We're not going to use the same color mode. Kind of want the brightness to look a little intense, so just set the shadows all the way up to red. And here. So I'm on color balance. Shadows is red at 100. Midtones is red at 100, yellow at negative 100. And for highlights, red is at 0 and yellow is at negative 100. You'll see this on your own when you use the color balance tool. Again, color tab, invisible for me, but you'll see it. So that's what it looks like thus far. And it looks pretty good, but we'll add a flare to make it a little more relentless on our eyes. I'll set it to normal. Alright, screen the flash, muzzle, and it looks a little much, especially over here. We'll just knock it down a teeny bit. And I also like to bring the screen layer down and make the sides visible like that. So that's before and after. That's what we have so far. Alright, so I guess that's the first frame. So RIF, FAO, I'm exporting it right now. Again, wish you could see that. And now we'll work on frame 2. We'll add the recoil to them later, but you don't need the flares or the brightness. Oh, and I forgot one more thing for the first one. You need to make the back seem a little darker. It's a little much. So RIF, FAO, we'll replace that. We don't need that layer anymore. And we'll turn off any brightness. And for the second layer, we're actually going to make it look negative. So it's going to be inverted, and that will really bring up the intensity quite a bit. So, what should we do? You know, we can keep the flare. That's what it looks like on difference mode. It's kind of interesting. Again, these frames will go by really fast, so if it looks ugly or weird to you, you won't notice it in-game very well. So don't worry too much. We'll see what this one looks like on subtract. Oh, not that. No. Difference. Difference is okay. Actually, let's try subtract, but we'll change the flare to subtract as well. Alright. Maybe not. Grain extract. And inversion mode. So grain extract, difference, subtract, they're all negative modes. They also added exclusion recently, but we'll scale it up and blur it on this layer. So layer, scale layer, and we'll scale it up. And because the image is too small, we might have to erase the top a little bit. We'll scale the sides out a little bit. using the scale layer tool, obviously. Well, maybe not as obvious in my lovely video with my BS screen recorder. Or maybe I just haven't learned how to use it yet. Haha. And I'm using a blur tool. I want to see what this looks like on difference again. It's an interesting effect, really. So you know what? Let's actually try to combine it with subtract. So if we just turn these shadow layers down, it might look okay. We'll also make this brightening and darkening flash a little bigger. You know what, let's see what it looks like in grain extract. I think grain extract is alright. Set this brightness layer to difference. No, not really. Subtract? Nope. Alright, whatever. Subtract, exclusion, difference. It's an interesting effect, but I'm not in it. I think that looks okay. We'll make that the second frame of the flash. RIF FBO. And for the third one, we'll just have a shadow. That's all. So, colors, desaturate, and what mode will I use? Let's see. I think average is interesting. And I'm not really going to desaturate the top one. It looks okay. The expanded one. And a little more. And we're about to add the recoil. Now that we're done. So we'll just have RIF GAO, and we'll compare it to the shooting sprites. Alright, we should set it to 400. Again, this will look a lot better at a very high speed, but for now we can live with it. So I like to stretch the back a little bit to make it look like the gun is moving up a little. And we'll make this just a teeny bit bigger, since this is only the first frame. And filters, blur, zoom motion blur is what we're going to be using. And this tab, I know you can't see it, but there's a mouse option here that allows you to coordinate where you want to put the median point, where it's going to blur from, basically. So if you move it higher, it's going to blur differently, basically. Alright, so I think right about here looks alright. We'll set the blurring factor not very high, since this is just the first frame. And second frame. We'll scale it up a little more. Again, using scale layer. Since these ones will be blurry, it's totally okay to scale it. I know in the first tutorial I said don't scale things. That's only in certain situations. Not too much, but enough to look totally brutal. So again, this mouse icon in the zoom motion blur, that's right next to center X and center Y. You'll see it yourself, hopefully. And that's where we're at, down to the last frame. Last frame's just going to be similar to the first frame, but with less dramatic stretching and blurring. And for the flashes, we're pretty much done. Just need to export them. And we can go on our merry way. We'll see you all later. For the next tutorial, we're going to be making reloading. And then we'll start with the code.